July 24, 1965. 4F-4C. Phantoms cruising at 23,000 feet over North Vietnam. Clear sky. Routine escort mission. Then something punched through the clouds below them, a streak of white smoke trailing fire. One pilot later described it as a flying telephone pole with a rocket motor strapped to the back. The SA-2 missile detonated directly under the formation. The shockwave flipped Captain Roscoe Faubert's Phantom upside down. The aircraft disintegrated. Faubert and his backseater ejected into enemy territory. The backseater, Captain Richard Kieran, survived 6 years as a prisoner of war. Faubert did not make it out of the jungle. First American aircraft lost to a surface-to-air missile in Vietnam. It would not be the last. The problem was simple. You cannot bomb what you cannot see. And the North Vietnamese were hiding their SAM sites under triple canopy jungle, moving them every few days, turning their radars on only when American jets were overhead. Someone had to find them. Someone had to make the SAM crews turn on their radars and reveal their positions. Someone had to fly into the missile's kill zone and survive long enough to mark the target for the bombers behind them. Enter the Wild Weasels, pilots whose entire job was to make themselves the primary target. The Wild Weasel concept violated every fighter pilot instinct. You didn't avoid threats. You hunted them. You flew ahead of the strike package, turned toward the SAM site, and waited for the radar to lock onto you. The first platform was the F-100F Super Sabre. Two-seat fighter, pilot up front, electronic warfare officer in back, operating 4 small radar receivers that replaced the need for a giant dish. The equipment could detect the fan song radar, the fire control system for the SA-2, and give you a general bearing, not distance, just direction. So the tactic was simple and insane. Fly low, using hills and valleys to bait the heavily camouflaged mobile SAM sites. Once the fan song locked on, you knew which way to turn, but you still didn't know how far away they were. The solution? Fly high. Make yourself an easy target. Wait for the smoke trail. The SA-2 traveled at Mach 3. It was 35 feet long and it weighed 5,000 pounds. It climbed to altitude trailing a massive plume of white smoke that could be seen for miles. That smoke trail told you exactly where the site was. Then you had seconds to react. Dive toward the deck. The SA-2 couldn't track below 3,000 feet. Get under that ceiling and you were safe from the missile. But now you were in the engagement envelope of every anti-aircraft gun in North Vietnam. Radar-guided 100mm flak batteries were positioned around every SAM site to catch aircraft doing exactly what you just did. The North Vietnamese weren't stupid. They knew the Weasels would dive to evade. So they stacked defenses, SAMs high and AAA low, a kill box with no way out. The F-100s attacked with rockets and 20mm cannon fire. 4 F-105 Thunderchiefs followed with heavier bombs to finish the job. The doctrine was, first in, last out. Weasels arrived before the strike force, and they stayed until everyone else left. Maximum exposure time, maximum vulnerability. In the first 2 weeks of operations, there were 0 surface-to-air missile kills. 1 F-100 was lost, 1 crew member was killed, and 1 was captured. 6 weeks later, 1 F-100 remained operational. 4 crew members were killed, 2 were captured, 3 were wounded, and 2 had quit. The problem was not just the missiles, it was physics. The F-100 fighters were too slow to keep up with the F-105 strike force. Weasels had to use afterburners constantly just to stay in formation. That burned fuel and left limited time over target. When surface-to-air missiles started flying, the F-105 fighters could run, but the F-100 fighters could not. The Pentagon upgraded the fleet to 2-seat F-105Fs in mid-1966. Faster, tougher. They were armed with the AGM-45 Shrike anti-radiation missile, which homed in on radar emissions, but the Shrike's range was half that of the SA-2. You still had to get inside the kill zone to fire. 6 weeks after the first F-105 Weasels deployed to Thailand, only one aircraft remained. The North Vietnamese were learning fast. Vietnamese SAM crews were not just sitting targets. They were playing chess with American lives. Tactic 1. Coordinated salvos. Instead of one site firing, 2 or 3 batteries would light up simultaneously from different locations. A Weasel could dodge 1 missile, maybe 2. 3 missiles converging from different angles left no escape vector. Tactic 2. Radar ambushes. Turn the fan song on for just 3 seconds, long enough to get a firing solution. Then shut down immediately. If a Shrike missile was already in flight, it lost the signal and tumbled harmlessly into the jungle. The SAM site stayed hidden. The Weasel wasted ordnance. Tactic 3. Offset launches. Point the radar 15 degrees off to one side. Fire the missile. Shut down before the Weasel could triangulate the exact position. The missile would track on inertial guidance for the first few seconds. Then the radar would pulse back on for terminal guidance when the Weasel was already committed to the evasion. Tactic 4. Fake launches. Activate the missile guidance signal without actually firing. The Weasel's warning light screamed launch, and the crew would dump their bombs early, pull maximum G, burn fuel they could not spare. But there was no missile. Just psychological warfare that worked every single time. The Soviets kept upgrading the system. They modified ASA-2 missiles so they could home in on jamming signals from American bombers. That allowed the fan song radar to stay silent, and it made the Shrike missile useless. They also fielded new radars operating outside the Weasel's detection range. The fan song could stay off until the last second, then activate for a snapshot with no warning. By 1967, North Vietnam had 25 SAM battalions, 6 launchers each. They rotated between 150 different sites across the country. Weasels would map a site one day, return the next, and find empty revetments. The launchers had moved 5 miles down the road. The rules of engagement made it worse. SAM sites within 10 miles of Hanoi were off limits. The North Vietnamese knew this. They parked their launchers in the safe zones and fired with impunity. Weasels could see the sites, could hear the radars, but could not attack. They had to wait until the missiles were already in the air. Major Leo Thorsness, Weasel leader at Takli Air Base, described the mission this way. We would go in high enough to let somebody shoot at us, and low enough to go down and get them. March 10th, 1967. Thorsness and his electronic warfare officer, Kevin Gilroy, attacked 2 SAM sites through a wall of flak. Their wingman was shot down. Thorsness stayed on station for the rescue. He shot down a MiG-17 that tried to strafe the downed crew and damaged another MiG. He protected the rescue helicopter until it cleared the area. He flew home on fumes, and he earned the Medal of Honor. 11 days later, he was shot down. He spent the next 6 years as a prisoner of war. Captain Merlin Dethlefsen attacked the Thai Nguyen Steelworks the same day. He survived 2 MiG attacks and took multiple flak hits. He pressed the attack anyway and destroyed a SAM battery protecting the target. He brought his shot-up F-105F home, and he earned the Medal of Honor. The worst year was 1967. North Vietnam fired 3,202 surface-to-air missiles. They shot down 56 American aircraft. But the Weasels were working. Surface-to-air missile effectiveness dropped from 5.7% in 1965 to less than 1% by 1968. By the end of Rolling Thunder, it took an average of 48 missiles to down 1 aircraft. The Weasels had forced the North Vietnamese to waste their ammunition shooting at ghosts. In 1968, the Weasels got a new weapon, the AGM-78 Standard ARM, longer range, bigger warhead, and a memory circuit that kept the missile on course even if the radar shut off. Now Weasels could fire from 30 miles away, outside the SA-2's lethal envelope. For the first time, they could shoot without being shot at. The F-105Fs were upgraded to F-105Gs with better avionics and jamming equipment. But the airframes were aging, and losses were mounting. In 1972, the F-4G Phantom joined the Wild Weasel fleet. It carried the APR-38 radar warning system, the most complex ever fitted to a fighter. Digital processors replaced analog circuits. Real-time updates countered new threats. The F-4G could detect, identify, and track multiple radars simultaneously. It could data link threat information to other aircraft in the strike package. Operation Linebacker 2 in December 1972 was the final test. Over 350 aircraft filled the skies over Hanoi. B-52s, fighters, tankers, jammers, and weasels. The North Vietnamese fired 4,244 SAMs in 12 days. But the weasels had learned every trick. They suppressed the sights. They jammed the radars. They cleared the way for the bombers. F-4C Wild Weasel crews flew 460 sorties without a single loss. By the end of the war, Weasels had destroyed 97 confirmed SAM sites. The F-4G remained in service for 20 years. It flew with distinction in the Gulf War. Today, the mission belongs to the F-16CJ and the F-35. But the doctrine is the same. Suppress the enemy's air defenses so the strike force can survive. The difference is that modern weasels do not have to be bait anymore. They can fire standoff weapons from beyond the threat range. But in Vietnam, there was no standoff. Just a two-man crew flying into the teeth of the defenses, knowing that half of them would not make it home. Wild Weasel crews flew 100 mission tours over North Vietnam. F-105 pilots had a saying, "By your 66th mission, you will have been shot down twice and picked up once." The 50% casualty rate was not a failure. It was proof the mission worked. Because every weasel that drew fire was a bomber crew that made it home. The Wild Weasels proved that SAMs could be defeated, but only if someone was willing to fly into hell first.